Amidst the swirl of life's challenges, fears, and even moments of crisis, we make time to gaze at the night sky, to behold the vastness there, and to remember that this moment in time is but a flicker, not an inconsequential flicker, for what we do and what we think now truly does matter. Our work, though, is to let the debris of this world pass by, while we anchor ourselves to those things that we know to be true: love, kindness, compassion, and caring for this precious life, this precious planet, and all that calls this place, this pale blue dot, home. May this be our North Star. With love as our guide, how can we possibly go wrong? What a perfect question to ask here on a Sunday morning. Good morning to you all, and welcome. Welcome to our service here on August 29th at First Parish Church in Weston. I am Jeff Barstell, the minister, for those of you who might be tuning in on Zoom who don't know me. We are delighted, I am delighted, to gather this morning in our sanctuary holding an in-person service. There are live people here. Wave. So exciting. With COVID precautions in place and also live streaming our service today on Zoom. Last I checked, we had somewhere between 16 to 20 Zoom participants. This morning we welcome as our guest minister the Reverend Dr. Clyde Grubbs. Clyde is a UU minister who has served congregations in Indiana, Quebec, Massachusetts, Texas, Florida, and California. He is a practicing spiritual director. Clyde honors his family's Texas Cherokee traditions that inform his spiritual understanding and practice and his anti-racist work and understanding. Our organist and pianist this day is Jeffrey Weeding, and our music director is Bill Sano. Our service is being live streamed. It's being recorded. It's being produced today by Laurel Kulo and one who shall not be named. This month, we continue to experiment. We continue to experiment with a variation on our hybrid format as we gather here in person with COVID precautions, and we live stream it on Zoom, as I noted before. In addition, today we are going one step further by hosting a guest preacher who is participating virtually himself. Those of you watching on Zoom will see Reverend Grubbs on your screens. And those of us who are here in person will watch him via the screen and the projector that is set up here in our sanctuary. While we think this should work quite well, please bear with us as we try this for the first time. In addition to all this, I should note an edited version of the service will be available later today. As for today, it is a gift to have a group of you here with me in body as well as in spirit. So please rise up wherever you find yourself and join with me in singing 3 verses of For the Beauty of the Earth. The verses are in your order of service. That is also available online, virtually, in PDF format at our website. For the Beauty of the Earth. peace of God be with you. I invite you now to take a moment and greet one another, those of us who are here in person, and also, if you would like, those of you online, feel free to reach out to folks who are attending our service virtually this day. I think they're listed on the side in the column of the Zoom room that we are in. And also, just feel free to ping or call or say hello to those you're thinking of this morning. Thank you, Jeff. And now I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Dr. Clyde Grubbs, who will offer our chalice lighting words this morning on Zoom while I light our real chalice here in the sanctuary in person. Fingers crossed. Clyde?
Hello, good morning. Our chalice lighting this morning is from White Eagle, who was a chief of the Ponca people, Nebraska. It's about 1890. So here's the chalice lighting. When you are in doubt, be still and wait. When doubt no longer exists for you, then go forth boldly. So long as mists envelop you, be still. Be still until the sunlight pours through and dispels the mists, as it surely will, as it surely will. Then act with courage. So is the lighting of the chalice. Our scripture reading this morning is a combination of two different creation stories. The creation story of the ancient Hebrews had, as you probably know that story, it's in Genesis 1. You know the English translation, but my reading of the Hebrew and looking at some other translators suggests some other renderings. The Creator began to shape the heavens and the lands. And the lands being unformed and empty, with darkness over the surface of the deep water covering the land, and a wind from the Creator sweeping over the water. And Creator spoke, let the light begin to shine. So Creator spoke the light and saw that it was good, and Creator divided the light from the darkness. And Creator called the light day and the darkness night. Together, light and dark were one day. The Cherokee have a creation story as well, and we can appreciate the similarities and the differences as well. According to the Cherokee, in the beginning, the Creator gave birth to our world, but the world was covered with water. Everywhere, the water. The Creator created the animals, four-legged, two-legged, winged, and crawlers. The Creator did not create the two-legged ones till much later, because the earth was just not ready for the two-legged. Or maybe the two-legged weren't ready for the earth. Since there were no birds for the animal, there was no land for the animals to walk on, no land for the birds to perch on. All the creatures except the fish of the seas lived high in the clouds. After a time, there were more and more animals living in the clouds, and it was getting crowded. Lots of clouds, but there were lots of animals. So they looked down upon the water and agreed that they needed to find some place to walk and crawl and perch down there. So the birds looked and looked and looked and couldn't find any land. And some birds divided it into the seas and said there was land, but it was far beneath the waters. So they held a council. They held a council with each other and debated various strategies. And finally, a water beetle volunteered to dive all the way to the bottom of the sea and see what she could bring up. And so it went. The mud at the bottom of the ocean was brought up, and the land began to form. And the water beetle brought up, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And finally, there was enough land to form a domicile for the animals, and the birds flew over the land, and their wings dried the muddy, wet earth. One bird, the low-flying buzzard, had a big impact on the earth because wherever his wings rose high, the mountains were formed, and wherever the wings dipped, valleys came to be. Now the Cherokee say the Creator told them to live in the valleys, the mountains that the buzzards made. So there you have it, two creation stories. Both find the earth to be a good creation, but one is given its shape by the breath of the Creator, while the Mother Earth was not ready for the animals until they worked together to give it shape and dry it out. Two stories about water covering the earth. So ends our reading for this morning. There's a haunting scene in Zora Neale Hurston's important novel, Their Eyes Were Watching God. One afternoon, the protagonist, Janie, sees Seminole Indians passing through the swamp, headed east. The Seminole yell and to warn that a hurricane is coming. But no one believes them. It's a nice day. Why hurricane coming? That night, the great Okeechobee hurricane struck, killing over 3,000 in what remains one of the most devastating recorded natural disasters. The Seminole had read the tall grasses in the swamps near the Lake Okeechobee, where the lake opens up to that river of grass we call the Everglades. And they observed that the seed pods had swollen and were popping open. And they began to leave the area, moving to higher ground. The Seminoles said, The tall grass spoke. The tall grass spoke to them. From generations of experience living in Florida, they learned how their ecology behaved, how the flora responded to different weather patterns. That experience allowed them to know that the hurricane was coming, and that their experience with hurricanes convinced them to evacuate to higher ground. That was 1928. 1928, before Doppler radar and mathematical models, which is how our scientific culture has learned to predict storms. They had instruments. They had no instruments. They had no computers. But they did have indigenous wisdom. And they had what we might call seminal science. Seminal science. On the prairies west of the Missouri River, the Caddo and Wichita people built very large houses made out of grass and cedar frames and mud, low to the ground, very low to the ground, digging into the ground so you could stand up in them. Seen from the distance, they might even look like little mounds on the prairie. Some of these structures were big enough to host a whole village for dance ceremonies, games, through which the community celebrated the sacred and enjoyed being with each other. The grass houses were both breathable and waterproof. The Caddo and Wichita peoples had lived on the prairie for years and generations, and they had experienced all kinds of weather in that open environment and knew about blizzard snows, and they knew about the relentless sun of the summer, and they knew that the prairies could see tornadoes. The big houses stood up to the tornadoes, and they resisted being crushed by the snow. They had learned from their environment how to build a sustainable relationship to it. They did not go to architecture school, but they had indigenous wisdom. Their wisdom let the building be part of the prairie, and with the prairie, not against the prairie. They practiced Caddo and Wichita science. Let us move even further west. Further west, few people know that Phoenix, Arizona and its surrounding suburbs was built over and sits on one of the most extensive and sophisticated irrigation systems that the world has seen. Now, I'm not talking about the present water robbing system that has been set up on that desert over the last century. No, I'm not talking about a system that was built by the Hoboken people 2 centuries before the slave trader Columbus got lost in the Bahamas, where he and his crew were discovered by the Taínos. The Hoboken's irrigation system was a major engineering feat. The ancient canal system dates from the 5th and 6th century according to the Christian calendar. But the building continued for hundreds of years. Thousands of years of waterways were constructed, watering tens of thousands of acres of crops, and water was returned to the river throughout the project. The Hoboken people learned from their surroundings and built a viable technology that arose out of nature. And they continued building and building to the point they began to work against the river. By the 12th century of the Common Era, they had built the point where their complex was completely unsustainable. The Hoboken civilization collapsed when it lost touch with its relationship with the environment, when it became arrogant of its own accomplishments, and began to ignore its own indigenous wisdom, thinking it could go further and further and build more and more. The Hoboken people no longer exist as a people. They went the way of other urbanized cultures and peoples who ceased to listen to Mother Earth. And they did not live within the limits imposed by the desert and the river. They forgot the practices that had given their culture life in the first place. For most of the time that human beings have lived on this planet, the two-legged ones that came along later, people paid attention. People paid attention to the earth. They lived in a place. And they provided for that place provided for their needs by knowledge of the particular environment, and they learned by experience how to create sustainable economies. And by living in harmony with the earth, she revealed her secrets to them in that place over time. Let me repeat that in other words, indigenous wisdom is particular to a location. It is the wisdom of people who have learned by experience to create a sustainable way of life. And knowledge comes from practice over time. The ancient medical understanding of my ancestors, the Cherokee people, was based on observing things like this herb does provide relief for poison ivy. That one doesn't. But don't chew it or drink it as a tea. No, make a balm out of it and rub it on the rash. Medicine women kept the knowledge and trained their daughters, and the body of knowledge grew over time. And most pharmacology today still owes its basic formulas and potence to the practices of ancient herbalists, whose treatments were often as effective as we know today. Now we are coming to understand that the health of Native Americans before the European invasion was excellent. They did not suffer diabetes or cancer or heart attacks in large numbers like we do today. Their diets were mostly vegetables, beans, greens, squashes, and whole grains. They had plenty of exercise and lived very long lives comparatively. They didn't eat just one food. They had dozens of varieties of corn and other grains, and dozens of varieties of legumes and fruits and greens. Today, our commercial agriculture has greatly reduced the choices. So unless you go on an adventure into Whole Foods and pay a premium, or live near an organic farmer's market, the food you can buy in a typical supermarket in Kansas or Nebraska, for example, the variety is limited, and it does not supply human nutritional needs. American agriculture products are full of toxins, and our meats are full of antibiotics and growth hormones. But this isn't just about us. Food that we grow is grown and brought to us is destroying our soil, our water resources. It's hurting the planet, and the food system is unsustainable. Now, many Unitarian Universalists agree that there are just a whole group of crises, so many crises that our environmental committees don't know where to start. We may have been taught that these crises lie outside of us, lie out there in the world outside of us, and there's a crisis in the atmosphere, a crisis of the water table. And I am inviting you now to think that something different. The crisis is us. That our human relationship to our life-sustaining environment in which we live and move and have our being is profoundly alien to who we were evolved to be. Our culture's relationship to nature is deeply contrary to nature, and at the same time, we are part of nature. We have been taught to call the crisis of our relationship by various names: global warming, climate change, water resource depletion, species extinction, expansion of the desert, acidic buildup of our oceans, ozone layer destruction, rain, acid rain, deforestation, soil erosion, water and atmospheric pollution. And done in this way, where you just name all the crises, you say, wow. And we have a crisis of world hunger, and the commercialization of agriculture, and the crisis of diet and health, what I talked on a little earlier. And our media and politicians treat all these critical problems in isolation. There are different committees and different people working on each crisis, and we're taught they're discrete problems with solutions which are discrete. Discrete problems, solutions discrete. So just take this pill for the heart. Spend lots of money on technology to solve the climate problem. So again, I'm inviting you to consider the crisis of ecology as a spiritual malaise, a profound spiritual dysfunction. We're not dealing with a series of isolated problems. The crisis arises out of profound brokenness, a profound alienation of who we are as human beings. We have forgotten. We belong to the earth. The earth does not belong to us. We make these words of Noah Seath an exotic saying, something for perhaps Native American Heritage Month. But we do not live by these words. To live as if we belong to the earth would require a profound reorientation of our lives, starting with our souls. Our economy, our social practice, our politics are all premised on the idea that the earth is a thing, our thing, to manipulate and violate as we will. If we believe that the earth is a thing, that it belongs to us, that it can be bought and sold, we will believe that the problem of our ecology is a technological one, that we can solve the problems with techniques, with hybrid cars and windmills and fluorescent light bulbs, with carbon recycling. All good things, but they do not address the root problem. And if we come to live in this simple, profound reorientation, we can reclaim our human relationship to the earth. Our relationship to the earth, it gives us life. We can learn something of being in relationship, being of the earth, by listening. The indigenous understanding that we belong to the earth, listening to the earth, hearing her cries, leads to a deep appreciation that we stand on the shoulders of all who have gone before, that our ancestors live on in us, and their wisdom informs us, and we profit from the choices they made and the work they did and the knowledge they accumulated as we suffer from their mistakes and missteps. And therefore, every decision we make, we must consider the generations not only that went before us, but the generations that come after us. We must ponder the earth that we belong to. And we must know in our depths, in our mind, in our body, and our spirit, we belong to our earth. And we will come to an awareness of our surroundings, of this place that we inhabit. We live in a relationship to what has been and what is to become. In every moment, what has been and what is to become. This I believe, our renewed humanity will heal the earth, and our earth will heal our humanity. May it be so. May it be so. Join me in a moment of meditation and prayer. We lift our hearts in thanks for the sun and the dawn which we did not create, for the moon and the evening which we did not make, for food which we plant but did not grow, for friends and loved ones we have not earned and cannot buy. For all these things that come to us as gifts of being from sources beyond ourselves, gifts of life and love. We give thanks. And let this be the seed time. May the work we do be a celebration of our many gifts we have given. Please join me in a time of silence, and then we will say the Lord's Prayer. Jeff told me that you sometimes have different translations of the Lord's Prayer. I'm offering you today the Aramaic version of the prayer of Jesus as rendered in English. The Aramaic people still live in the Israel, Palestine, Lebanon area, and they are mostly Christian. So the Aramaic prayer of Jesus is the language that Jesus spoke. O thou, creator of breathing life for all, nurturer, sustainer, help us breathe one holy breath, seeing only you, creating a wholeness. Desire with and through us the rule of universal fruitfulness unto the earth. Create in me a divine cooperation from many cells, one voice, one action. Grant that we need each day in bread and inside substance to call our growing life. Erase the inner marks of our failures and make just as we scrub our hearts of others' faults. Deceived not by distraction and falsehood, free us to walk your path. The Aramaic word amen means may it be, so may this be. So let us say amen.
Please be seated. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Reverend Clyde Grubbs, for your good message on this day. The offertory, which just occurred, we did not pass any plates. Instead, we will put a plate out at the main entrance or exit for the sanctuary for those who would like to make a contribution who are here in person. For those of you virtually, as we like to say, we gladly welcome and accept donations, especially during these summer months. You can do so by mailing a check to the church or using our PayPal account that can be found by clicking through our stewardship page on the website. Thank you all for joining us on this day. We invite you to check out our upcoming programs and services, including our in-person fellowship hour that will begin in our very well-ventilated parish hall and outdoor garden following the service. There is no fellowship hour, alas, on Zoom today, though in the coming weeks we may develop a way to do that as well. It involves putting a laptop or computer with a camera in our fellowship hall. This week we'll host our regular programs, including Knitters and Stitchers, tomorrow on Monday at noon, and our Wednesday morning meditation program on Zoom at 8:30 a.m. We continue to have a good and robust attendance at our online meditation programs on Wednesday morning. If you've never checked it out, I encourage you to do so. It takes 30 or 40 minutes. People can come and go as they need to with respect to their work schedules. It's a great way to find your center, find some peaceful space in the middle of the week. Our next service will be on Sunday, September 12th. This will be our kickoff Sunday for the new season and will feature a child baptism and a moment of silence for the 20th anniversary of 9/11. It's amazing that it's been 20 years. That seemed to fly by, at least for some of us. Weather permitting, we hope to be outside for that service in the upper parking lot, using our lovely woods on the periphery of the property as our backdrop. Following the service, there will be a special fellowship hour and picnic-style luncheon, again with COVID precautions in place. See the upcoming eParish post for details. The First Parish Church book group will meet on Thursday, September 30th, 9:30 a.m. in the parlor, and also on Zoom. We will be discussing The Codebreaker by Walter Isaacson. In addition to our monthly book group, First Parish is going to be hosting this fall an all-parish read featuring the landmark book Cast by the former New York Times reporter turned scholar Isabel Wilkerson. We are inviting all of our members and friends to join us in reading Cast and then participating in a series of programs in October and November. Again, see the upcoming eParish post for details. There are links to all of our online and in-person programs in the e-newsletter that was sent out yesterday and again this morning, and on the calendar page of our website. With the ongoing uncertainty about public health and safety, we continue to find ways to support each other, both in person and at a distance. As I like to say, because it is true, it's wonderful to see so many of us finding ways to step up and reach out during these challenging and unusual times. That's what churches like ours do. Again, I'd like to thank Clyde Grubbs for his good message this morning, and thank all of you for joining us in person and online. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord keep all those whom you love, whether here or in some other place. May God be your companion, and you be God's friend as you walk together through all the days of your life. And at the journey's end, may you all find the welcome of God's love. It keeps us all. Amen.